All right. My name is Tully. This is my guy, Greg. If you would introduce yourself.
What's up? I'm Gregg Ziemba, a drummer about town. I play with Rubedo, Wheelchair Sports Camp. Sometimes I'm out there with Devotchka. Been touring with a band called Black Violet out of Seattle lately. And I have a record label called Unit E Records. And we've been putting out a bunch of records, trying to get everybody hearing all the cool local music from Colorado, and then all our friends' bands from other places too, to make it help make a lot more national scene around what we're doing here with
Hell
music.
yeah. So this is the Creative Question podcast, and the intention is to interview creative people and get an understanding of that creative entrepreneurship, right? Like what it takes to be a sustainable creative artist.
Yeah.
So the first place I want to start is like where you're from.
So I grew up in Denver. I grew up in Baker neighborhood,
Okay.
west side of Denver. I lived there till I was about 8 years old, and then we moved to southwest Denver, the Bear Valley, and then grew up. So always lived in Denver my whole life. Love it here. I love to travel too, though.
What was it like growing up in Denver early on?
It was cool. Like, it was a different place. It was a little more kind of desolate feeling. Like a lot in Baker when I was a kid, there was a lot of abandoned houses, and like most of the houses had that are now just like a single family home were like duplexes or triplexes, or lots of people living in the houses and stuff. So it had like it had even in that neighborhood even more of like a density than it does now.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird to think about, but because they think they're adding density all the time, but a lot of times it's like those big Victorian houses, one family's living in there.
Where it used to be like a whole army of people.
Yeah, and it was great. I really am happy I grew up down there because there was just a interesting mix of people, and like my parents are really cool, and like I would just kind of let me run around with all the kids in the neighborhood and kind of see it.
What about back then inspired the creative version of you? Like what brought that out? Like what about growing up in Denver in the late 80s, early 90s?
I mean, just that there was definitely like a vibe, because of it was kind of Wild Westy. Like people were like, you had to be careful on 4th of July because people would be out there shooting guns, and like there were, the Inca Boys were big in there. So there was a lot of gang violence, and like, my parents would probably be so scared that they'd know this, but we would like hide and watch gang fights in the streets and stuff.
I remember people telling me stories of like the shootings would start happening, and they would go jump in the bathtub or like go in the basement, and it used to get really wild back then in those neighborhoods, the west side, the north side.
I remember like looking out my window one time, and there's a house across the street from us that they were pulling out tons of weapons, like mass amount of weapons at one point, and it was just and I think after that, that's when my parents were like, let's move a little bit south.
Let's figure this out.
Yeah. And it was cool to have like the counterbalance, because living down there, it was different. Like I was like the only white kid in the school and stuff like that, which was, I think, a good thing for me to experience as a kid. And then moving to Bear Valley was kind of like where a lot of people ended up, like their parents had like government jobs, so it was like
complete culture shift. Like
trash people, firefighter people, like
a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
So like you went from being in this basically somewhat hood neighborhood, experiencing some diversity and unique culture stuff, to typical American.
But it still had like some diversity, because like a lot of those government jobs, have generally a more diverse workforce too. So it was kind of interesting. So it's like kind of me and my friends who live in Bear Valley always joke is like the first generation out of the hood kind of vibe. So there's still kind of some of that vibe, but it was definitely like it was very nice out there, and like beautiful like Bear Creek, and like all like it was just a beautiful area.
How and when did you get your first set of drumsticks? Like when did that happen for you?
So yeah, in living in Baker, like my dad's a guitar player. So he was always playing guitar and like teaching. He wanted me to play drums because he always liked drums. But
Yeah.
he was a military brat, so he moved around a lot. So he just playing guitar. It was easier to move guitars around.
Yeah.
So he was like always wanted me to play drums, and then like I went to church on like First and Acoma right over there, and they had like a talent show. And he's like, let's play together, and he bought me like a little toy drum set that had like paper heads and like it was just like a funny little toy drum set. But we were always constantly taping up the heads. But he taught me how to play like boom boom tap. I was like about 5 years old.
Word.
And so we played that little talent show, and then from there like. It kind of became more of my identity. Like, no, I play drums. I'd tell my friends, like, I play drums. And I knew my one little beat. And then and then it just kind of went from there.
Yeah. How old were you when you joined your first band? Or started your first band?
Yeah, so right when we moved to Bear Valley, we were looking for friends. Like I was looking for friends and stuff. And there was some kids in the neighborhood that were a little bit older than me. And they were playing music, you know, so they were like a couple years older than me. I was like 9 and they were like 11.
Yeah.
And it's funny, we actually met them in line at a convention waiting for Patrick Waugh's autograph, right? When he became an Avalanche player.
Yeah.
And they were right in front of us and happened to just live like a block away. And then they played guitar and bass and my dad's like, my son plays drums, and we just hit it off. And then we started a band, I think we called ourselves Rampage. And then we just kind of practiced every Sunday, got together. They were older than me, which was kind of, at the time kind of like hurt my feelings because they would like tease me. I didn't know shit, but it actually kind of helped me because I got more hip to like what was cooler ahead of time, like they were like, I remember one of the dudes was like, we want to change the band to a punk band. And I was like, yeah, I know about punk. They're like, name a punk band. I was like, White Zombie, Metallica. They're like, no, it's like the Vandals and shit. And I was like, okay. And then they got me into punk and kind of understanding like the underground music.
That
and, like,
rhythm, what that was.
Yeah, like the smaller band, like playing like the Ogden or the Bluebird. And then they started getting into high school and they started playing in other bands. And I started playing with Kyle, who was in Rubedo. And we had a band called ADD, and we were doing the punk thing. And then we were playing at, like, actually right over here, like 17th and Franklin, there was a place called Cafe Euphrates.
Yeah.
And he was like the only dude who would let young people throw shows. So he'd let us just like run the spot. I think it was like a Iranian food restaurant during the day. And then he just found like a niche where he could like throw shows and charge
get kids to come in and expose his business.
Yeah, and I don't think it's funny at the time, like we weren't caring about making any money or anything. We didn't even know you could because we were like 14.
Yeah.
But like he was charging like $10 at the door.
A little
All
cover.
these kids were paying, but and then at one point I remember a guy in another band was like, hey, you can ask him for some money and he'll give you some. And he gave me like $10. And I was like, yeah, we got $10.
That's hilarious. What was the first like major venue you played in?
The Ogden.
The Ogden.
And I was young because they used to do these, like back in the day, the interesting thing about the Ogden and the Bluebird is they used to have a lot of like more local shit.
Back when it was nobody in particular.
Yep.
Way back. Yeah, NIPP.
Yeah. That was the day. I mean, it was such a fun time to grow up, you know? I feel blessed that that's how it was because you'd go to these shows.
It was truly independent.
And the venues were like run down and it just felt a little more like anarchy kind of at those shows. It was kind of fun. Like, and the bands like, I mean, they must have been making more money from the tickets or something. I don't know. But they would sell their t-shirts for like $10. So you could go to the show and buy like a couple t-shirts, $20.
Yeah.
And and this was like when I was in high school. But like we played, there was like all these kind of predatory concert promoters. They'd call like Big Time Presents or something.
Yeah.
And they would kind of like find the high school bands and be like, hey, you guys should come play this. Like if you sell 50 tickets, we'll give you $1 a ticket. Like really predatory things. But like all these high school bands were like dying to play. And there was tons of high school bands at that time.
That's something Denver's always kind of done, is this like pay to play thing.
Yeah,
Like
no,
it's
for sure.
that model seems like it's recycled itself time and time again.
And they hide it in new forms.
Yeah.
But that was when it was funny, but we kind of played them too because we had done it once before. And then we realized that they, like the ticket sales, like they didn't count the leftover tickets. So there was all these bands at our school playing it was called Exposure Fest.
Yeah.
Isn't it a great name? And like all the bands at my school were like playing it, but we were selling our tickets for half price because we knew they didn't collect the leftover tickets.
Yeah.
Because the last year they didn't. So, and this year they were doing it at the Ogden. We were like, we're going to get a sick spot. So everybody's other friends were buying tickets from us because they're like, how are you fucking selling for half price? And we're like, don't worry about it. And then it was funny, at the end of that, then they did ask for the leftover tickets, and Kyle snuck, like crawled on the floor when they weren't looking and pulled like a whole bunch out. And like and then we turned in, like they had like a plastic trash bag with all the extra ones they were throwing away.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, it was cool. We got to play like like there was like an all day thing. We had like, I can't remember if it was like maybe like 5 or 7 o'clock, but it was packed Ogden Theater.
Yeah, which is dope. That's literally my favorite venue.
Dude, it was that's the only time I've ever actually played there. But it was so cool. But it was funny because like right before us, this band called DDC played, and they were like our friends. They went to South, and it was just like, I don't know, it was just a killer moment. Like even though it was like this funny predatory thing, the bands around us were really cool.
There's still like a community that was being built that you guys weren't fully aware of until you were partaking in the experience.
Yeah, so sometimes those things are funny because they kind of are shitty, but they're kind of like, shit, this is the only outlet for that, so fuck it. I mean, we're just out there trying to do it. It's not fair, but like, well, I don't know.
You know, you struggle and fail your way to success, so it's just one of those things. Like, hey, it's what we had to do to get started.
Yep.
And then what started you down the path of like the DIY and kind of curating your own culture?
So funny enough, this is a perfect segue because seeing how they structured that, I was like, well, we could do our own thing like this. Like we could rent a place, and then we could, like, you know, I saw where they bought their tickets from because it had the website on the back, and I was like, well, we could just do our own one, and we could pay the bands twice as much as they paid the bands.
You guys are gonna do it for the bands and do it for the right reasons.
And we'll have a backstage, and we'll put a bunch of food there and like make it cooler and make it fun. And I'll get all the coolest bands from all the different high schools, like in DPS, you know, because we had friends in all those bands, and then they'll bring their friends, and it'll just be cool. It'll be like all these like fucking rockers from all these different schools together. And we did that, and we just like rented like a hall, like it was like my dad's friend's hall in like 104th, like so far like way, and like we rented it, but like shit, all these fucking kids from DPS came out, and we packed the house. Yeah. And then it kind of realized like, oh shit, we could throw our own shows.
Do you think that like that hustler mentality has roots in growing up, like starting off in Baker and like seeing some of the struggle and some of like the like creative entrepreneurship that happens in the hood?
No, totally. I mean, just yeah, because like kids were always selling candy and
whatever,
like everyone was hustling everything.
Everybody's trying to figure it out.
And even too, like at that time, like watching my dad he's a big hustler too, because he grew up like a military brat, so like he was always overseas, and then he never really grew up in the United States, but military bases kind of are like they operate like little United States.
Little bubbles.
But when he moved to the United States, like all his parents and everything were still in the Philippines. So he was kind of just figuring out, and then he like just landed in like Colorado Springs because the Air Force Academy was there. Some other people were moving there, and he was like, he didn't want to do the military. But then when he lived in like, he ended up making his way to Denver because he was working in television and stuff. Yeah. And then but then he kind of like noticed like there's these houses that are broken down, and he's super handy, and he just hustled, you know, and he was like, oh shit, I'm going to find out how to buy this house. And he would buy it. He bought a house, and he'd fix it up and then rent it out and just kind of hustle. Like, and it was cool because then there was another house in the neighborhood with like a rent and livable house, you know? And at that time it was kind of a cool thing. And like, I don't know. And watching him kind of like do that and grow
your sense of hustle comes from your dad as well.
Oh yeah. He's for sure hustling. He like, we're like now getting older and trying to pick his brain more of like, what's your mentality? Like, I mean, honestly, my mentality is like I'm more like passion driven.
Sure.
So like, and that can kind of get in my way sometimes because I'm like, I won't worry about the money at all.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like, no, this is so fucking cool though. Like,
Yeah.
this is what I want to do. And then I'm like, oh shit, like, but
It has to pay for itself.
Yeah.
How do we make money?
Exactly. So now obviously I've had my own like ups and downs with that, and I surround myself with people who are more vigilant in those ways, and I understand more. But my dad is like always been kind of like more driven by like he's driven by passion, but like more like, okay, here's the ceiling with the finances here. I'm not gonna hang out here too long, like because I'm gonna go to the next place where I can kind of grow and make more money.
Yep.
So he kind of he's more mathematical, has that kind of
Strategic.
So like he's easy to pick up on that. My mom is more like passionate, like working with like at homeless shelters, and I'm kind of more.
You veer that way.
Yeah. But I'm trying to have more of a
I feel like
balance.
you don't give yourself enough credit because I see you out there hustling too.
Yeah.
And even you telling the story of the tickets and like the half off twice, ways to maneuver your way into bringing your passion further. You're hustling to do that. Even though you're not hustling in the sense of I need to make all of the money.
Yeah.
You're finding ways to enhance your passion and experience, and you're doing that through the hustle, through like the little tips and tricks you've learned subconsciously through your dad and growing up in the hood and those kind of things.
Yeah.
What so you're doing some DIY events, you're doing bands, you had talked about what was it, ADD?
ADD, yeah.
What was how far did that go, and then what was the first big band that you were like, wait, this is crazy?
Yeah, so ADD that was when we were like in middle school and like high school.
Uh-huh.
And that band, we did like cool little shows and stuff, but at that time I really didn't know how to like. I remember just literally it was like the internet was around, but it was like you could still operate like not internet, so like we'd like print a picture of ourselves and put it in a folder, and then have our band name and our logo.
Yeah.
And then a CD, and then like a printed bio.
Yeah.
And I would go to all these places, but I wasn't 21. But then every once in a while, like some place would like let us play.
Take a shot.
And then we'd be like, they wouldn't know we weren't 21 because we're kind of getting on that edge. We were like 18.
Uh-huh.
And then they let us play until they figured out like one of our friends would be like all drunk and be like, hey, you guys are let me see all your guys' IDs. And they're like, fuck, dude, you fucked it up.
Fucked it up for
now
everybody.
We can't play here anymore. So we were kind of operating like that for a while.
Yeah.
And then it got easier once we got older, of course, because then you get like, you figure out little tricks to get into the clubs. Like they're stamping your band member who's 21's hand, and then you're like licking the stamp and everything.
Doubling it up. Another like, hustle. That's what I'm saying.
Loading in like with stuff really quick and like hiding in the corner, like just kind of figuring out. And I don't know how easy it is to do that nowadays. I don't even know how easy it is for a fucking little tiny band to book a show. It was really easy back then.
As far as little tips and tricks, like there's a will, there's a way. Like you just keep pushing until you get through. I think, and we'll talk about that as we go, but on the live music front, it's changed a lot, right?
Yeah.
The venues have gotten hip to genres of music that brings in people where they can pay the artists less.
And the real estate is so much more valuable. Because like talking about like when we were kids, like the real estate was almost like kind of worthless at that. People were trying to like, my dad bought a house in Baker for $15,000. Those houses are $1 million houses now. But he sold it way before then. But like still like that's crazy to think about. Like it so like a weird bar could have a venue and they don't really have to make that much money because they bought that bar for $50,000.
They bought the building for next to nothing, and then it doesn't take a lot to run it.
So now all these people's mortgages are higher, and even if they're not, they're all matching up their shit together. And
there's still like an expectation or a standard that's set by the market. Yeah. And if they're not making that, then it's not working for them, even if they don't have to.
And a lot of like bigger concert promoters are buying the smaller clubs.
We just talked about what I went through with the company that bought the companies I was working for.
Yeah, no, totally. So it's just you see that going and going and going, and then like they use them as like little farm venues for their bigger venues. So and they take
and what they do is like these bigger companies will be throwing massive festivals, and they can leverage the headliners of these massive festivals to play these smaller venues that they own throughout the different markets and say, hey, we want you to play this, and this, and then we'll give you a key spot at blah, blah, blah festival in Vegas or LA or whatever.
100%. And then, so it kind of gets worked in this weird way where like, if you're a shitty little band who's 18, you're meaningless.
You don't have a chance.
I mean, I'm sure, like you said, like I'm not, I'm almost 40 now. So I don't know I'm not out there hustling. I'm sure there's like 18-year-olds figuring it out on their own way.
The landscape's just
there.
different, but it's not the same as it was when we were doing what we were doing.
Yeah, it definitely seems a little harder, but maybe I don't know. Maybe things will change, but it seems like the game is more like real estate. Like those fools who are buying up those little clubs, they're like just trying to make as much money off as they can, but they own the buildings and the equity of the buildings are fucking skyrocketing over the past decade. So they're fucking fine,
Oh yeah, they're doing just fine. So what? Back to this.
Okay.
What was the moment or the band that you joined or started that was like, oh, we got something. Like this is what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. So I mean, I always knew it was what I was gonna do.
Yeah.
After ADD, me and so then I kind of started hanging out with Alex, who's the guitar player in Rubedo, and we had a band called Tangible Stereo with our friend Bubba, and then we were doing it same hustle, kind of we were like in a little order, so we could like play we got in at the Lerma Lounge and at like we always played a lot at Quixote's, that like all these little places, and that band was doing all right, but we were kind of doing some real avant-garde shit. We were like super into Mars Volta,
experimental
and
stuff.
we were like taking that shit. We're like more experimental Mars Volta. So it's just we were doing that. It was cool for like it worked out for like a while, and then later Kyle, who was in ADD, he was like wanting to start a band again. So me and Alex and Kyle started Rubedo.
Okay.
And I think that's the first band that I was in that was like things started being like, oh shit, things are like kind of taking off. Because right then I met Ike Owens, who was the keyboard player of Mars Volta, and he was just like exiting Mars Volta. It wasn't even like announced. And he was playing with his band called Free Moral Agents, and they played at Old Curtis Street. That was a place we played at.
Yeah, I remember Old Curtis Street.
It was a great place. And then there was like, it was a tiny place. Became really good friends with him right off the bat, just talking, hanging out at the bar. And then he was like, I showed him Rubedo and he was like, you guys are cool. Like I'm producing records. He was kind of figuring out his next
what
move.
He's trying to do.
And he always liked producing bands and how he had the time. So he's like, I want to produce you guys. So all of a sudden we were like, of course, this is our dream. We want to have like a at that time we'd probably say CD because it was, vinyl was coming back, but CDs were still.
That was what it was. You wanted to put an album out.
Put an album out, yeah. But I remember being like, can't wait to hold my own CD. We had like burned ones and shit. That we did, but we went and worked with him. Like he brought, like we went out to San Francisco, and we were kind of working on a small label called 20 Sided Records that was based out there. And just from tour, so that band we started touring pretty quick. Yeah. Because I was like, I wanted this, like, I'm ready. Like, I'm fucking doing everything. So I was calling all my friends, being like, who did it, and picking their brains, and then looking online and finding places to play. And like someone else like hit us up and like was like, I just graduated school. I want to help book you. Helped us book some shit. But it's like the funniest tour. It was the funniest tour in the world because we didn't know what we were doing. So like we had weird days off because we're like, we'll play all these weird cities, and then like not a bunch of them came through. So we'd be like in Long Beach for like 4 days.
But you're getting to experience Long Beach and you're checking the things out and getting familiar with that culture.
Crashing on someone's couch. It actually worked out in a really good way because we had like a week or a few days with like all these different people around the whole West Coast.
In the scene.
Yeah, and we were gone for like 6 to 8 weeks, I can't even remember, but a long time. And so we were just like, then all of a sudden we became like, we had like really good friendships. So it was like, cool, I could call up people and then they're like, yeah. And then everybody's bands started getting bigger and better and our friends. And then Ike was introducing us to tons of people. So that's how we know each other really. Yeah. So, cause like he introduced us to Ruben and he was like, Ruben's the sickest fucking promoter in Phoenix, like let's go out there, and we played there, and then we became friends with Jonas, Hurst, and like all of them. Like it was just it's really cool thing about music and art is like you do something, you can play one show, and you kind of like open that door and like show your heart to everybody, and they're like, oh, I'm that guy I want to be friends with.
We're the same.
We're the same.
There's a sense of community that happens.
Like, come sleep at my house. Like, we got a couch. We know what you do. Like, you're my favorite band now. Like, let's do it. And with that, and luckily, like, really the scene that really grabbed onto Rubedo, because we're like a rock band.
Yeah.
Was the underground hip hop community. Like No Can Do, like all those fools were just like you guys are it. Like we really love it. Like. And I don't know, that was cool, because then when I started thinking about it, I'm like, oh, these are the guys who are doing like the DIY punk shit, that are just a hair older than us. Yeah. And we kind of came in as like the next generation.
The next generation of it. Like what Drunken Immortal was doing, maybe 10 years earlier or whatever, all over the Southwest, West Coast, because they had their own movement.
Yeah, and that wasn't a movement I was familiar with. I think just like the little bit of age difference,
I brought the Drunken Immortals. I had them booked to play. It's not there anymore. What was that fucking bar? It's on 11th and Lincoln. It's now the Weed Bar, sports bar.
Stoney's. What was
Before it was Stoney's, it was like Eddie's or something.
Eddie's.
Whatever it was, one of my homies was the sound guy, and he plugged it up, and so I had that set, and I hustled and grinded and had it set up to sell. I think I sold like 300 tickets.
That's great.
Yeah, we were ready to go, and because I was really active with my own personal music and moving around, and a week before the show, the liquor license got fucked up, right? So the venue just closed, and me and this guy DJ Soup, we were just like, we went down there one night, and there's the fucking sticker on the door, and I'm like, fuck. So we just end up going and getting drunk, and we stumble into this bar, the Funky Buddha. And I meet the GM at the time, this guy Brandon, and he plugs me into Bar Standard.
Wow.
And like I alley-ooped this show into Bar Standard.
Way better place probably.
Which had a full sound system. And like I said, we had sold a bunch of pre-sale tickets, and then we were able to tie it into like Milk Bar. And that honestly was what led me to running the 5 nightclubs. Like that one night of this venue being shut down and stumbling into a bar took me on this whole other journey. But needless to say, that was back. I think that show that I brought the Drunken Immortals out was like 2010, 2011. And then we did a bunch of stuff. Like I brought like Gray Skull to fucking the Funky Buddha. Like I started bringing all these random like dope hip hop acts and just having fun with it. But anyway.
That's exactly actually what I did too. Like, because once I had, like just like you did, like once I had this network, people were calling me it was like a full-time job. People were calling me like, hey, can you help me set up a show in Denver? And they'd all be really cool bands. I'm like, fuck yeah. Because
once you become that guy, it's like...
I was like, fuck. And then I was like getting bored of like doing it, or not bored, but like burned out.
It wasn't serving you.
But then that's why I was like, I have to have my own place.
Yeah.
So that's when me and Thad started Unit E as the venue. Because we were like, I was like, I see this, like we could just live there, and we can throw shows, and we were looking for kind of like warehouse or whatever, someplace we could live and throw shows. Yeah. And we ended up finding this place just like a few blocks. Like we were always living in La Alma, Lincoln Park area, and we were like, we found this place, and it was kind of nicer than what we had expected, but we're like, it could be cool. Like fuck it, and then we just like, it was like a kind of like this room actually, probably about the same size, but it was just like this open room, and we just like put mattresses on the floor and we'd sleep, and then when we'd throw shows, we'd push the mattresses into the hallway. Yeah. Because there was like other businesses in there. Wow. And they were all closed that night, so it was like perfect. So we put all their shit in the hallway, had this big hallway, the big staircase, and then we would just throw shows. So then all of a sudden it was really easy. I was like, yeah, what day you want? Cool.
Now you're a venue.
And then I was like the fucking dude, because people were hitting me up, and I was always giving them their sickest fucking show on tour, because we had an audience that was coming to pretty much everything we did, and we were like, you know, we were just having a great time. And
And that's back to what I was saying earlier about you actually being a hustler. You're just hustling your passion.
yeah, passion, not much money involved.
Yeah, but you
I was
still,
like, you know, having
you're-
great life
You're
experiences.
doing what you need to do to get the thing that you want, which is the moment, the experience.
And that was a big reason why too. Like Ike and I were tight for many reasons, but we got really tight because he was like coming to Denver all the time because he was like touring. He started touring with Jack White, and then Jack White, they tour different because they got more money. So he would do. He would come to a town and they would have like 2 or 3 days off before the show because he wants to hang out. Like they would do cool shit. Like they were like, let's go to Coors Field, and like the players would be like throwing balls. They'd be like hitting balls on the field. Like, and Ike never wanted to do any of that kind of shit.
Yeah.
So we would book shows. So we'd have like when he was on those 2 nights, we would do like a Rubedo and he'd play with us, and then the next night we'd do what we called like the double ply translucent caterpillar, which was kind of like our idea of like a 70s like Miles Davis on the corner kind of jam.
Yeah.
You know, where there's just like 12 people in the band, and he would orchestrate us like, these fools go now.
That's tight.
Now these fools, and then everyone go, and it was such a fun time. But at that time, Jack White, he was doing all these secret shows, so everybody would assume that that was the secret show every time. So it would snap. It would be sold out, like packed with people, and it would be cool. It would be funny because like Jack White, he never showed up, but like his whole band would be there. And that was at the time they were touring with 2 bands. They had a all girl band and an all boy band. So like you never knew which band you were gonna see. And but like the whole, you know, it's funny because like people are so short sighted. They like didn't see Jack White, so they wouldn't be bummed they had a good time, but like damn, I didn't see Jack White. But I'm like, man, if you pay attention, there's fucking 20 people who are in his band just all around this fucking place. They're here. Like, and that's what I've always been like good at with the hustle is like, I know who everybody is around. I know who the manager is, and I'm like, I can be cool and kick it with anybody.
You know, make it your business to.
So like it helped me. I got all these relationships, and like they were starting to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then throw in those shows, and all of a sudden when Rubedo was going on tour or Wheelchair Sports Camp was going on tour, I knew everybody out there.
Yeah, you had access to markets that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, and then that's how I got in Wheelchair too, was because Kaylin came to Uni E a lot. And then Kaylin, Wheelchair Sports Camp, would play there, and then Rubedo would play, and she was like, "You're the best drummer, I fucking love you, I want you in my band." And then she got on tour with Sage Francis. And then her drummer couldn't go, so I went. And then she was like, "This is it."
Yeah.
And then she got on tour opening for the Flowbots. And then he couldn't go. He maybe just didn't want to tour. I don't, you know what I mean? It's not everybody's thing. And then I was like, okay, I'll do that too. And then once I did that, it was like, she was like, "You're my drummer now."
You're in there, yeah.
Yeah. So that was all at the same time. So then I had all these connects, and then so like Ike produced the first Wheelchair Sports Camp album that I'm on. And then we were just kind of in that scene. So we were hanging out in like Long Beach all the time, Phoenix all the time.
Yeah.
The Southwest was just like, I was hanging out with people in the Southwest as much as I was hanging out with anybody in Colorado.
Yeah.
And it was fun. We'd always have these like really memorable.
Just on the road doing
times.
dope shit.
Yeah. Hanging out, doing water balloon fights in October in Phoenix, you know, with Ruben and Mouse.
Phoenix in the wintertime is amazing, right? Like right now it's just starting to get hot, but like that late November through February is always perfect.
No, it's so nice. And it would be so funny because we'd go out there and it would be like just getting cold here, and then it'd be like summer again over there. We'd be like have our shirts off, like cooking carne asada on the grill.
What's your most memorable show that you've done, period, outside of Denver, outside of Colorado? Like on the road?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, that show, honestly, where we played in Phoenix and met Ruben and all them.
Where do you remember the venue?
It was so funny. He just had like a thing called, we booked it like the day before. So he had like a thing called Hollywood Alley.
Yeah.
That he was doing Thursdays at.
Yeah, Hollywood Alley. No,
And he was just doing, I think he was just doing sound at some karaoke thing.
Yeah.
But he was like, "Yeah, you guys can play. Come play, and I'll tell all my friends because they'll all be so fucking stoked to see you guys." Because we sent him like a video. And then we were so late to that shit. Because like Ike lost his phone. Nobody had Ruben's contact except for him, so we couldn't even tell him. We didn't even have smartphones at that time, so we couldn't hit him up on Facebook or whatever. So he didn't even think we were showing up. And then like the last minute we pulled through, and he's like, "Get on stage." And then Ike just looked at me. He's like, it's gonna be fun playing tonight. And we were all tired. We just drove all the way from Denver to Phoenix, which is like 12 hours.
Yeah.
And I was like, that kind of was like, okay, let's go. And then we went out there and we just fucking tore the place down.
Yeah.
And it was just like that was like a really cool feeling. That one was a cool feeling. Recently, like about a year ago, I think a year and a half ago, I played with drums with Devotchka. We played this festival in Oregon called the Oregon Country Fair. And I kept seeing it on the tour. And I wasn't paying any attention to what the things were. And I thought, oh, are we playing the county fair? How lame or whatever. It should be interesting. And then I realized like, oh, this isn't that. Like this is like a fucking hippie festival that's been going on for 50 years.
It's like their thing.
It started at the same time as Woodstock by like the Merry Pranksters and the like Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test people. And there's no corporate sponsorship. And there's like, it's just like a really weird, interesting like festival setup. All passion, probably not much money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like just a passion thing. And like,
But it's been going on for so long.
so we like rolled into there and we're going in the forest. And I'm like, shit, we're going deep in the forest. These trees everywhere, so lush because it's Oregon.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And then we pull up at this stage and it's this stage that they've been using for 50 years.
Wow.
And it's just like this crazy experience. And then we like walk up to the stage and I'm like, I don't even know how many people were there, but it was like 10, 20,000 people
Wow.
with like flags
Yeah.
and all kinds of shit. And we just fucking went out there and just like rocked that shit. And it was like, I was like, wow, that's cool. Like
That's
it was
the
cool
thing.
to play in front of, I had never played in front of that many people before.
Mm-hmm.
So very, very memorable. And the whole experience was like kind of funny because not knowing what I was getting into and just like walking the stage and just be like, oh shit. It was kind of like surreal.
Yeah.
And then another one that was really fun is Wheelchair Sports Camp. We played this show. So we were just doing a West Coast. It was actually when Trump got elected the first time. And we did like we called it the Wall to Wall tour.
Yeah.
So we played Tijuana all the way up to Vancouver.
Okay.
And then, actually, you know what? It was the tour before that. But we had like a day off and we played Tijuana. Because our friend was like, you should go, you have a day off, go hit up this
spot
bar
in
called
Tijuana.
Mustache Bar. Like you're playing San Diego, it's no thing. You'll have a fun time. And they accidentally double booked us, but they accidentally double booked us with like all the hottest bands from Mexico City who all grew up in Tijuana.
Yeah.
Coming back for like to play Tijuana.
A one night
So
thing.
it was sold out. But they were like, the bands were cool. They're like, yeah, you guys just play after us. And we're like, yeah, no problem. We'll play whenever, whatever you want. So this whole show goes, nobody leaves. We go up and play. And it's like we're the headliners.
Wow.
And we just like blast it, full moon. You can see the full moon, like Tijuana. People are going crazy. Otra, like encore.
Yeah.
And we're just fucking going bananas.
Just ripping.
And then we got a tour after that. Like because like they booked us on a big festival in Tijuana. And then when we came back, we headlined with like all these huge bands in Mexico. They were so fucking good, but like people here don't know them.
It just worked. Yeah.
And then we were just like, put us on 10 p.m. main stage, huge audience, like, and they ate it up.
Yeah.
Like, it was just like, and then we were out there signing. I'm like a head taller than everyone out there. I'm like signing all these autographs. People are like, I'm a lawyer, dude. If you need anything, call me. Give me their numbers.
Yeah.
Like, I got you. You guys are so sick. Like,
That's awesome.
Just experiencing that culture and how loving and they were so
Inclusive.
welcoming to me and like becoming friends with all the people there. That was a super memorable time too.
Hell yeah.
Those are probably like the 3 most memorable shows.
Yeah, I love touring. There's so many crazy experiences and moments you can have if you open yourself up to like new opportunity and new relationships.
Yeah. No, straight up.
So you'd played a bunch of big shows and then you're coming back to Denver and like resettling in. You guys, I know Rubedo had done a bunch of things, a bunch of 4th of July parties at the Bluebird.
So that kind of evolved into like Unit E, we had a 2-year lease.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of it, we were all like ready to move on from it. Cause it was like hard to keep afloat financially.
Yeah.
We got in a little trouble with the law because we didn't understand liquor license laws. We thought we were like, oh, we're an art gallery. We could just do donations or whatever. And then we got like in trouble for that. And then, so we had to like be like more scared. And then people started like the neighborhood started growing more. Like like we were on 12th and Santa Fe. People started calling the police on our shows. So it was just getting harder. And like, I think all of our relationships were getting really tested in that. And so we were all just like, me and Thad and our friends who were doing it were kind of like, when it was over, we're like, all right,
We're ready for the next thing.
Yeah, we're kind of cool with this. But a lot of the bands that we were playing with and the bands that were facilitating the most in there were now going out and selling out places like the Larimer Lounge and Rubedo. Then we got offered a spot to headline the Bluebird. And so that was a very memorable show too. Like Ike came and played with us, and then we sold out the Bluebird Theater.
Yeah.
So then we were kind of like, okay, now we're at this place like we can sell 600 tickets, and then we were getting to be like Rubedo and Wheelchair in 2 different markets. We're being able to be the opener on all the shows I'd want to be an opener on, and it was cool. And our audiences were just growing and growing and growing. So we were just like, just riding that,
Just having fun with it.
having fun riding that wave. I didn't have to worry about the club anymore. Like, and all the bands we were kind of surrounded in were doing better, so they were getting booked on their own easier. So that was like a cool moment. Like we were just touring all the time.
The scene kind of had developed into something special, and it was like a cool flash.
Yeah, and a lot of the scenes we had developed in different cities around, particularly around the Southwest, were all very like thriving too.
Yeah.
So we could just go out and hit the road, make a little bit of money, make some new merch, sell all that shit, make some money off that, and then just, and we were having so much fun doing it. It was like, and we were, everyone in the band was so creative, like doing other things while they're out there. Like Mouse and Kyle became like best friends, and Mouse Pal and Kyle were making Christmas specials together and doing just like silly shit, like just having fun
with it
and being creative and having a good time, and it worked really great for that time period of my life. I'm so glad I did that. 'Cause I wouldn't really do that now at this time in my life, but like in my 20s, like, and like just going around
having the opportunity
whatever.
to see the world and travel and experience it very freely. And then, so you're doing that, and then COVID hits. And how did you guys keep that momentum and like evolve your creative entrepreneurial path?
So that time was kind of interesting for us because like right before COVID, like in particular, like in Rubedo, we were like not getting along great. Like we're brothers. We all grew up together. We've known each other forever. So we know each other.
Brothers fight though.
Yeah, brothers fight. And we were definitely, and it was a tough time because Ike died.
Yeah.
In like 2014, the end of 2014. So we had like a lot of people were taking us on tour, and there was a lot of attention on us around that. And it was kind of weird and hard, and like just like it was cool because like cool people we looked up to were like taking us under their wing and like helping us, but it was kind of like also hard because we really missed our friend.
You hadn't healed from that.
No, it took us a really long time because he was our friend. He was a really great friend, but he was also our mentor, like an older brother type to all of us. And he like was he introduced us to becoming professional musicians.
Yeah.
So he was like, yo, you want to do this? And I love you guys. And you guys, he actually said, you guys are hustlers. Let's go. Like, and he would introduce me to everybody. And like, and he would kind of, he was like, he wasn't like managing us, but he was kind of doing that too. He was kind of doing so much. And then we were going to start the record label together and start putting out all these bands he produced. And then he died. And it was just like, well, now I don't know what I'm doing anymore.
Yeah.
And we were still doing it, but it was just tough. It was just a really tough time trying to figure out how to make new records because he had produced all our records and played on all our records and trying out different people. And we had great times, but it was still hard because it would make us miss him when we were doing the records. And how it's trauma, or it's a traumatic experience. So like when you're in it, everyone's real touchy and irritable.
There's like a void in the experience, and it's causing this tension or this weird release with everybody else.
And he had just such a good like rapport with everyone in the band that it was so easy because we could just be like, what does Ike say? And then once we kind of lost that, we're like, well, I guess we had to find like what we say again, which is, is cool, but like it was hard. And then, once like leading up into COVID, we kind of were doing a lot of touring and doing all that stuff. But then we were kind of like, okay, like we did that 4th of July show for years at the Bluebird that was doing well. And that last one, we were just like kind of burnt on it. And we're kind of realizing we're not going to do it again.
Yeah.
And then we were kind of taking a break from each other a little bit. and just like not doing much, you know. And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh fuck, like right away. So we're like, well, now nobody's doing anything.
Now, no, yeah, now we're all on pause.
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting. So it wasn't like I have friends who like I feel so bad for him. Like one of my best buddies, Devin, he drums in all these amazing bands. He was drumming in Summer Cannibals, and they were blowing the fuck up. Touring with Cursive, touring with Highly Suspect, like all these big bands, getting ready to tour Europe, and then COVID hit, and it just like boom.
Put the kibosh on everything.
Leveled it, yeah. So that was tough for him, but like for me, I didn't really have much going on right at that moment. So it was kind of like didn't hit me super hard in that way, you know. But we did have to figure out like, okay, well, what do we want to do? And then we started just recording a lot. So we have a friend in Tennessee, and he got this studio, and he's like, yeah, just come down here anytime and just record. So we just started recording all this music, and so we would write. We had all the time in the world, so we would just write, record the whole writing thing.
Yeah, almost leisurely because the world's on pause.
It's on pause. Like this dude is just like, do whatever you want here. And we were just like, okay. And then we just like made all this music. So like we started putting out that music. And then now lately we're gonna drop a new record this summer. And now we found like we made friends with this guy, Matt Embry, and he's in RX Bandits, which is our like favorite band before Mars Volta time.
Sure.
You know, he actually is the dude like outside of the Bluebird told me, check out Mars Volta. You like Mars Volta. So he became like friends with us, like started really liking Rubedo, and now he's like been helping us, and he kind of has that same pull that Ike had where like everybody in the band trusts his opinion really well.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of nice, refreshing, like feels
You guys
like,
are back to having a balanced interaction with each other.
yeah, because we all know each other so well. It's like so easy to go back into like old ways of being like the old, you know how like when you're with your parents and you act like,
You fall in line.
yeah, you like act like you did when you were a kid, and you're like, wait,
Yeah.
I don't act like this with like anybody else, but why do I act like this with you?
Yeah.
And it's like that with them because we've grown up together.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's been really fun to kind of have that excitement back, and we just dropped like a new single called Oligarch Slank, and it's doing great.
Where did you drop the single?
We put it on Spotify.
Yeah.
And
Through,
then-
what did you? Was
or
there
all of them.
Was there a record label that put it
Yeah,
out?
so we're gonna Matt has a record label called Matchdown Babylon. He hasn't done much in a long time, but we're really excited to like work with him because it was like the label that RX Bandits did their shit on, and like a lot of the shit that we really were into, like late high school age. Like we're excited to he's revamping that label, putting out some RX Bandits stuff on that, and we're part of this new launch.
That's tight.
So that's really cool. And then with Unit E, the record label I have, but we haven't gone into that.
Unit E, the old venue that you would throw parties at,
Yeah.
you parlayed that into a record label?
So during COVID, a little bit before COVID, Thad and I were starting to want to do something creative together again. And then we were like, well, what do we want to do? Like, I don't know. We don't really want to own a bar. We kind of were like, I don't know. That and throwing shows all the time is like, it's kind of hard, you know. And we were like, well, what if we did a record label? Because like throwing shows, we learned how to make all these bands sell out bigger venues. Why not like none of these bands really know how to sell a lot of records. Let's try to figure out like the equation to selling a lot of records.
What that looks like.
So then we started doing that, and like about a year ago, the rubber started really hitting the road. And like we put out like 9 releases already in like about a year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we've been like cooking, figuring out how to do all that, and so and then also too, we found like a lot of record labels that we admired when we were younger that were like more, they're not totally DIY, but kind of like DIY, but that like got upstreamed in that era because you know, major labels, if a DIY label was doing pretty well, like a major label would start
They'll come grab them
swooping in.
up.
So that was kind of happening. We noticed a lot of these guys like had these labels that we loved, but they didn't have much of an infrastructure anymore. Like, so we're trying to figure out ways to like pull them into our fold. It's kind of always one of my hustle mentalities has been like, I remember one of my teachers in college, he's a really great bass player. And he was like telling me, he's like, when I was young, I'd get a gig and it'd pay $300 and I want to play so bad with this drummer who's the sickest drummer in town. I'd pay him whatever it took. I'd pay the other guy whatever it took, and then I would take nothing. And then but I would get there, and then I got in the scene, and then they'd start hiring me for gigs and shit like that. And I was like, I always thought that was interesting. And so I've kind of done that with like my idols. Like I'll hire them for shit, or I'll make something happen, and then like I create that, and then it always gets reciprocated.
Yeah.
It always has helped me. So like I kind of make myself of value to people, and then hopefully they'll return that favor, and 9 times out of 10 they do.
I think that's like a really important tool or key to entrepreneurship is creating value, right? Like you create value of you create your own personal value proposition, making yourself valuable, and in turn you build the relationships, and then that value becomes realized.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do with the label right now, is just like I see that, because like I know there's a bunch of people who would like the stuff that the bands were like we're talking to and working to, and they have all this like golden material that's sitting there.
Yeah.
But to them, it's the scene they grew up in. So it's like not, it's like whatever. These are my friends, but it's like, dude, that's like one of the biggest bands in the world's first recording that never came out. Like, let's figure out a way to do that, and then help that promote all the other stuff around these scenes. Like, basically, like taking this torch and being like, okay, well, what am I like? What's my musical artistic lineage? Like I'm a dude who like I can comfortably say like I'm part of the Sublime lineage, because Ike was part of that. He was like the young gun there hanging out. He brought me in. Like I've met all those, like a lot of the people in that scene, and now I'm helping them out, and we're working. It's like this, I feel like I'm keeping that dream, that little bit of that dream alive, and stuff like that, and all that kind of scene, and just like, it's fun, It's a good time.
It's dope to be able to like pursue your creative passions as a way of life, which I think more people should try to do. Like everybody looks at being in a band or being a comedian or whatever, like, yo, you have to make to this point to live off of it. But in reality, if you just dive in feet first, you'll find a way. No,
totally. And I think, and one thing too in COVID, like, because you definitely helped me out, because like I was like getting comfortable not going out, you know? Because I had a kid too. So I'm like, this is like, I'm hanging out at home with my kid, grilling, like going to bed early for the first time in my life. Like, I'm just like, I don't know, I'm kind of enjoying like this lifestyle. But then you call me like, hey, get a thing together, put a jazz group together to come play at Milk on Thursdays. And I was like, I mean, and I was like, it's all late. We got to play, because it's a club, we got to play all late. But
all late, I got to come at 9.
But then, we did that, and that was really rejuvenating too, because we're like, that's an interesting part about being a musician, is like, you got to keep your chops up. And then like a lot of really good musicians I've seen, like, obviously, if you're fucking Jack White or if you're fucking Bruno Mars, you don't have to do anything else but your big ass shows. But like, even my friends who play in big bands, they still do little weird shows and all kinds of stuff
to like feed that creative energy inside of them. That's how you grow it and expand on whatever ideas. You have to go get weird first, and then that energy manifests into whatever progression is going to be.
100%. And like, I like to have it's like having like a balanced diet, like I like playing jazz a lot, and it's a whole different energy, and like playing at Milk for all those years.
Well, it's funny, that particular thing was just like, I was like, DJs are great and it's fun. But I was so burnt out on booking DJs that I wanted to put together a party that was for me. So that when I walked in the room, I could enjoy it for a minute before I had to go to one of the other venues where there is a DJ that's doing their thing. And again, nothing against DJs. I love that. But I also love spontaneous creation through instrumentation, right? Like,
and it's funny, because for me, it was kind of the inspiration I found in it was kind of the opposite, because I've never been in this DJ world. And then all of a sudden, I'm in this club where like every other room is a DJ, and I'm becoming friends with them, and they're teaching me how to DJ. And like now we're like, and now I know the difference between like techno and house and drum and bass and jungle. Like, I know that shit. I didn't know that shit. So for me, it was like, oh,
Re-education.
Yeah, because I've been like, I studied so many different kinds of music just because I'm like, get bored on one. I'm like, I listen to reggae and listen to all this shit.
And I would imagine that you also started building relationships in that club world with those DJs, and I'm sure you're probably able to do things with those guys,
And we were booking them on things and
vice versa. They're booking on you, and
it was great. And then also our jazz was morphing more into like a housey drum and bass jazz thing.
which is tight. Like,
so
what does that
yeah.
even mean, right?
So we started to have our own, at this point now, we have our own unique, people are calling it space jazz. We didn't even start call it that. They were just calling it space jazz. Like, okay, we're space jazz. Like whatever, we were calling it acid jazz, but that kind of has a different connotation. But like, cool, whatever, like it works. It just happened to work because we didn't have a bass player. Ben was playing all on like a sub-fatty Moog. Like, so we could really kind of easily like create those electronic music textures, but with a live band, and then playing jazz standards, and people were loving it. And then we'd play like a Nirvana song, and they would like fucking go
lose
crazy.
their mind.
And like, it was just a fun. It was like a really fun experience, and that like I need that in my life. And then I also need going out playing with a bigger band that I'm nervous playing with them, and then
playing in front of 20,000 people, like whoa,
like
you have to be scared again.
Yeah, and then like but then that can kind of feel monotonous at times. You're always in a hotel. You're not meeting people the same way. I'm still having a fucking blast. It's just different. And then I got to go out with my boys and just fucking crash on my friend's couch and play at a club with 100 people there.
Yeah.
Because that energy is fucking nuts.
That's a different one.
That's a whole different kind of energy because they're right up in your face and they're fucking going at it. So like I like all those. And then I love too, like Kaylin and I in Wheelchair Sports Camp, we get to play like, we do a lot of activist work. So we get to go to like conventions and play conventions and learn all about like, disability awareness or gender study, like, figuring out gender studies at this college and like all these different things. And I'm just like, I'm in a whole world that I barely know anything about.
Okay. When you, as you've just talked about that and all the different perspectives of that, can you run back to that little boy and his dad that walked into the church and sat down on that toy drum set? And can you imagine that moment will coalesce into this life?
Yeah. It's crazy to think how just like, it's overwhelming almost to think about how
beautiful.
Like, yeah. Cause like to think about that now, like watch how that progressed and then be like, turn into like, okay, now I'm friends with like pretty much all of my favorite bands. Like from when I was a kid, there's still some I don't know, but like
that first show at the Ogden, and all of these moments that like are like micro textures to this life that you've been able to build through being a creative entrepreneur, through being a drummer.
Yeah,
it's pretty dope.
This one analogy I always think about is like, so when the RX Bandits, our favorite, me and my friend group's favorite album is called The Resignation, and it was cool because it was like. We were into punk and ska, like that whole skate punk ska scene. And they were like the band that was starting to pull it. They were like going like more proggy and kind of noisy and weird and experimental, kind of math rocky. And then we're like, oh, this is our fucking lane right here. And then so that album was like our favorite album. And then 20 years later, which was last year, they were doing like the tour of that, like 20-year.
They're redoing the tour.
We're gonna play this fucking album front to back, and it's like the 20-year. And I had this moment where my band Rubedo was opening the show, and then we sound checked, and then we were done, and then I walked down the hallway, and there was all the VIP people who paid like
whatever
$200 to meet the band and do a Q&A, and they got like a signed poster and talked to them about the album and ask them questions. I was like, damn, if I would have went a different route in life, like I was like, no shame in the game, but say I was like an accountant or something and I had money, I would be maybe that guy.
Sure.
Which is cool, but I'm still here. Like I just didn't have to pay the money to do it. I get paid to do it.
You were gonna get there no matter what.
Yeah,
it's just how it happened.
Yeah, and it's cool that I feel like that is a lot of my creative entrepreneur friends were like that. We value that so much that it's cool, and like you realize like you can't put like a money value on being backstage with an artist that you admire and learning from them.
Yeah, there is no monetary value to the experience. and the texture, the smells that you get, like, you know, stumbling into a weird Tijuana situation that turns into a tour. Like, you can't explain that. You just have to live it.
And people are like always like, oh, because especially at the age I'm at now, people are like, oh, you're in a band? It's like, what? Like, or like, they'll be like, they always ask me like, well, do you make money? Like, even my friends like who are in bigger bands, people ask them that shit. It's like, dude, like, yeah, we make money.
Yeah.
It's just different. It's just sometimes we have a lot of money, sometimes we don't have a lot of money.
You figure it out.
Yeah,
You're living for different reasons.
You're riding waves that you create and waves that are coming and you see coming and you go. And you're just fucking doing it, and you're trying to, you're collecting all these cool experiences and having these really wide communities and friend groups you can call on. And, you can cobble it together and make it work. I always tell people, like, I play in a lot of different bands, like if I didn't, I'd have to have another job. But like, because I have Corner 3 and we're playing all the jazz gigs, and that is something that's fulfilling to me, and I'm making money doing that, and then Wheelchairs making money. Yeah. I make money when I play with the vodka. I make Rubedo's going out there and rebooting the shit, and we're gonna make some money. Like, it all just kind of cobbles together.
It works.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you for doing
Yeah, of
it,
course.
my man Gregg.
I appreciate it.
Boom. Creative Questions Podcast.